So you ran for office and kind of got that out of your system. So what happened after that? Then Craig took a job.
Well, yeah, so Craig was working for M&M Mars for 11 years for that whole time. I decided I wanted to have a third child. Craig was like, oh, this is a bad idea. We should stick with 2. He might have been right. 4 is a lot. So I had Walker. I went back to work. I was working at the Girl Scouts Heart of New Jersey, which is one of the Girl Scout organizations here in the state, doing fundraising, because I learned from the campaign that like a lot of people really don't like fundraising, but I don't mind it, especially if you're asking for a political campaign is one thing, but asking for the Girl Scouts, which is such an incredible organization, is really not. That was not difficult for me to do, and it's not a difficult argument to make because you can look at the numbers. Like almost every member of Congress and every astronaut was a Girl Scout and also played sports.
Yes.
But 94% of C-suite women played sports, which is impressive. But it was. We had a good time. It was great. And then I ended up moving over because a friend of mine worked at the Pingree School, which is a K-12 independent day school here. So I moved over to work for her, also doing fundraising. And then almost immediately accidentally got pregnant with my fourth child. And then Craig came home one day and was like, hey, we have this opportunity. Mars will move us to Belgium for 3 to 5 years. Surprise. So I said, yeah, let's go. I mean, it wasn't even really, crazily, it was not a very long conversation. It was like, yeah, we're done, let's go. So we packed up, we moved with 20 bags. We didn't bring any furniture. They moved us into this amazing house in the middle of Brussels. And the older kids went to the international school, the younger kids went to the public school. So, well, Chase was just a baby, he was only 6 months old, but they only spoke French for the first 3 years of their life, which was so cool.
Yeah, that is really
and my
great.
French is terrible, so the teachers were always really annoyed with me, but I was trying. It was bad. But during that time, I wasn't working because I didn't have the papers. Belgium was really hard to get work papers. So I actually found an international school that happened to be at the bottom of our street and went back and got my MBA, which was awesome. And half of it was in Paris. So like once a month for a week, I had to go to Paris to stay. It was really bad.
Yeah, that's really hard. So here you could have, you made a great choice. You could have just kind of stayed home with the kids and you know went shopping every day, but you can't sit.
No, sitting
You're not
is
the kind
not
of person
really,
that's not going to be in your repertoire.
No, and my mother-in-law moved with us, so that was actually really helpful with kids too.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So now you've got your MBA, you've got all these kids running around.
Yeah.
And then you come back to New Jersey.
Yep, so we came back in 2015.
And you went back to Pingree?
I did. I went back to Pingree. All 4 boys were there. I was back in the development role, a couple different development roles, but became the head. I had coached hockey on and off for my kids when they first started. So the twins started skating when they were 3 or 4. Walker, my middle one, he started skating, he was really young. It might have been 2. Like, the pictures that I have of him on the ice.
Baby skates and they're like this big.
And he's just sitting on the ground crying. Like, he's just on the ice screaming. And he now won't get off the ice.
Yes,
so
and I know Walker, he's on horses and he's running around and he's bumping into stuff and
Yep. And he wants to play in the NHL. So now he will never get off the ice.
Right.
But so I've coached the whole time, but I hadn't taken on a head coaching role at a high school level. And so I did that, and I was able to build up their program so that 2 years after I left, they won the States, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, such a cool thing to watch them win at the Prudential Center. Like, it was really amazing.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I was excited.
Yeah, and I know I have here, so you did a lot of coaching.
A ton of coaching.
Yes. Yeah. So I know I have a list here. So, New Jersey Colonials.
Yeah, so that's a travel team. So I coached for them for 2 or 3 years, as well as Pingree. So those 2 overlapped.
So the Pingree women's varsity team, and then the NWHL, you were assistant coach for the Metropolitan Riveters.
Yep, I was assistant coach for a year, and then I became the GM.
The GM,
yeah.
And that was interesting because there was a couple years where none of those teams had a GM.
Yeah, I was the first GM. I think the first GM, I'm pretty sure. you know, and at that time, that league was such a startup league. Like being GM meant kind of doing everything.
Yeah.
Like everything from travel to food to drafting players. Yeah. The drafting was really fun. We had a blast. It's so fun to have those conversations and contract negotiations, and like it's just it is a whole different world.
Yeah.
And I care deeply about seeing women continue to have success in sports because it does so many great things. And then I think, you know, having little girls be able to see themselves on the ice and see that now, you know, with the PWHL and the Sirens being at the Prudential Center, you know, girls can see you can do this as an actual career. Like you can get paid enough to just play hockey. Because at the time with that league, it wasn't enough. So they all had jobs and then they had playing hockey. So, you know, it's great to see how much it's changed over the years and how people are able to do it full time now.
And I think the perception of girls in sports has changed.
Yeah.
I saw there was a clip once where they have people, you know, run like a girl, and everyone goes, and throw like a girl. And I think that whole perception is just being thrown out the window because
you
girls
watch the
are
Super
tough.
Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very, the Nike ad, which is I think the first time Nike's had an ad in the Super Bowl in a long time.
That was impressive.
Was very different than that. Like the run, it was much more empowering, and that was a great ad.
Yeah. And so you were the GM there, and then director of the W Hockey Partners, and then there was a quote where someone said, "This is Whitman Anna. She's moving up the ladder in the league, like one rung at a time, and you weren't going to miss any steps, and you learned how everything worked."
Yeah.
So I think that's wonderful, and you were really praised for rebuilding that whole organization.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, there was no money, so it was really hard to do. And also then Craig and I bought into the Connecticut team as an ownership
That's
piece.
the whale?
Yeah, and so then looking at it as like, how can we continue to empower our players with no money? But it came to a point where we ended up selling the whole league. To Billie Jean King, who's done a fantastic job. They put so much money into it. Yeah, and she's amazing. Right. So just watching that evolution over the years has been pretty incredible. But it's stayed around, and I think that is the strongest piece, right? We forget that the NHL is 106 years old. Right. They also went through 3 or 4 different rounds of what it is. So like this is not unheard of in a league that's trying to be on its own, right? You have the WNBA, which is a different business model, and so the PWHL has really tried to stay separate from the NHL. I mean, I think they would like help from the teams and things like that, but like not be bought by them. And so it's a little bit of a different model. I don't know which one's better, or I don't think one's better or worse, right? It's just different.
I think they're different. It's a different approach, and it's going to be a different growth process. Yeah, and I think soccer also has an evolution.
And soccer, I mean, the WNBA teams now are valued at $250 million. Right. It's crazy. It's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So fundraising, event planning, major gifts, getting people to believe in what you believe in and to donate their time, their effort, their money, that's a magical quality. That's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a hard sell. Like, they're all great causes, and I spent a lot of time with USA Hockey as well. I'm like a CEP level 5, which is the highest level coach you can be. I'm a coach developer, so I spend 6 months out of the year, twice a week, training all the USA Hockey coaches. We do it virtually now since COVID, so I'll train 60 a night, and it's interesting to watch how that has changed as well. It used to be a lot about X's and O's, which you can just Google, right? Like anyone can figure out how to train a goalie at my level. I mean, there are nuances, but like you can look it up. Yeah. But it's that social emotional learning piece. Like, how do you connect with your players? Like, how do you understand where they are? And I think kids today have such a hard time. Social media is great for some things and truly awful for others. And it creates such stress on our kids, and then they bring that onto the field or onto the ice. And like, how is you as a coach, how can you recognize that and help them through it, particularly with girls? So you know, that has been my focus. I coach now at Eastside High School in Newark, which is the first team I've coached with all non-white players, which is no different. Everybody's the same when they get on the ice, and all high school girls, yeah, they all have the same issues. For my team, it's more what they do to have to get to the ice. So with Pingree, there's a lot of parental support, a lot of guidance. Parents are there to drive. Parents are there, you know, possibly they have one parent not working, so that parent can drive, things like that. That's not the same with some of the Newark public schools. So, and I don't think it's like a have or have not thing. It's not, I don't want to phrase it that way. I look at it as, I'm so impressed with these girls and how they take such dedication to make it onto the ice. Like, we go through a metal detector to get into the rink. Like, there was a shooting there. It is not a super safe place, and they walk there every day. So their commitment to this game and to each other is so strong that they will make this kind of effort, and it's really impressive.